Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, we're going to be working on a minimalist wallet. And I have shown making this wallet before. Here's one I've been carrying, I think, for almost 4 years. And I just made it from some smaller pieces of leather. We'll get over here on the workbench and talk about it, but we're going to do a unique twist to making this wallet. I'll show you that there. Here's one that I created this morning. This doesn't have the unique twist on it, but it's a really simple project. I did sew this one on the Cobra 26 sewing machine, but that's the first one I think I've completely sewn on the sewing machine. Most of these I've hand sewn. So whether you're a hand sewer or a machine sewer, it's an easy project. You can make one in pretty quick order. I don't know how much time to say on the thing. You could probably make one of these in 15 minutes. And I get people ask, what sells at my artisan shows the best? This is one of the easiest ones. I'm probably selling them for too little bit of money, but it's a really simple project. Great gift ideas. I know it's a ways till gift giving season, but then again, you know, Father's Day is coming up, Mother's Day, and you know, do the ladies like these? It's a great way of organizing your cards in your wallet as well. So let's get over here on the workbench. I'll show you how I make this, but real quickly, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to call it a unique way of finishing this wallet out. So I appreciate you taking time to be within the shop today. We'll get over here and we'll get started. So to get started, I went through and I pulled out the leather, like I said, and I've cut some sizes. These are cut to size. These are 3 1/4 by 6 1/4, and these are 4 by 6. And make sure you do some varying on what you do. I have people that want an all black one, so I've made both the inner and the outer with black, and then I've done variations of brown on the inside or brown on the outside and done some combinations. And I grabbed this Vaqueta leather, and I think it'll really make some cool looking wallets as well. This panel here is cut for the inside, and then you could do the outside would be black, and I think the two colors would look pretty cool together. So what I'm going to do though, I'm going to break away here. I'm going to show you how I created these designs here. Pretty unique. They were easy to create, and I've used this one has some black antiquing on it that kind of helps highlight that pattern, but I think that's really kind of a cool look. So this one is cut for the inside, so you would have something that would be like this when it's finished. Sorry, wrong way around. And obviously the corners are rounded. But I mean, that's kind of a cool little way of a little bit of a flare in here. And I'm going to show you how this pattern is created very quickly. So we'll get over on the workbench. I'll show you how to create this unique pattern, and then we'll come back to how to assemble the wallet. So to get started, I've got a piece of the leather here. I've lightly cased it. I just add a little bit more moisture on it here. And I'm going to line up this pattern on here. And I cut the strips a little bit long, a little bit oversized, I would say, in both directions than what I need, and I'll be able to trim it to fit. I suppose if you were patient, you would be able to line up from one of these to the next. This one's got a hard border on there, but I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to set them over here and let those dry. Let me see here. I've got one here of natural vegtan. This one's a little bit thinner, so I'm going to add another shim here. You're going to have to play with the thickness of what's underneath your leather to get things to work. So this is just some natural vegtan leather here. I'm going to try this pattern here on the blue. A little hard to see there, but that'll really stand out when I get it out of the trash. Maybe a little hard to see there, but I bet that pattern will really stand out when I get some resin on that. So I thought I would try this pattern on this vegtan leather here. It's an embossing plate. And the machine just applies even pressure from one end to the other. Just doing kind of a combination of them. There's lots of design patterns available. A few of these pieces of leather I have really oversized in length, but they'll trim down. I like this one because the edge has got its own kind of unique shape to it. The pattern doesn't just stop. So you might be able to use this in the middle of a larger panel. Obviously it has to fit through this area here. It's pretty cool looking. I'm going to go ahead and work my way through the rest of the squares that I have cut. And I'll need to let these dry. When they're dry and we're ready for the next step, then I will come back. Okay, so you now see how I created this pattern. It's really a pretty simple way of doing it. That machine that I was using to crank through, it's used a lot in the craft world, especially in card making, and that's why I had it available to me. But there's no reason, I don't believe, that you couldn't use this same stencil or pattern with a clicker press and create the same thing. And these are, I'm going to say, from $9 to $20 a piece, depending on the size. You can get some that are longer, but the ones that I use today are, let's look and see what the size is here. This is 4 by the area here is 5 1/4, which is not going to be a problem. I have it equally spaced here. I have 6 1/4, and this will be where stitching is. So I don't have an issue with that. I think it'll look fine. This is the bigger panel, so it's going to be covered like that. So you'll see this top corner here. Let me think about that. Well, actually, that'll have a radius on it, so you're not going to really see much of this border. But it's available in bigger ones as well. So I'm going to put antiquing on here. So as I'm putting it on here, I didn't use resist. You can. I like the color that I end up with if I don't use resist on here, plus you end up with more that stays in this design if you don't use resist on here. So anyway, this is the Montana leather. I don't know if I said it earlier, the Vaqueta leather, and yeah, it's available in 6 different colors. This is the Fuchsia. So I'll just put a little bit on here. I'm not going to leave it set very long. It doesn't need it. Especially without the resist on there, it takes color upon it quick. And then once the antiquing has dried, I'll let the antiquing dry for, I don't know. A lot of times I'll do this when I'm doing other antiquing, kind of, get into the groove a little bit of doing that, and I'll do that. But I'll probably let this sit overnight before I put the resist on there, because I will put a resist on there. Now, this is dyed inside and out when you get that leather. It's pretty well struck through. I don't think I've ever seen raw color in the middle. And where I'm going with that is you will want to seal the inside of it as well. I guess it's not the end of the world if you get a little color rub off on the money or cards that are in there, but I think you will get some color rub off on what's inside of there with this leather. And I've used it with natural leather. I've used it with quite a bit of chrome tan. Your edges, you have the same challenge you have, with normal chrome tan leather on the edges. And I've used, I think I've seen where some people have said they do the same thing, but I've used white glue, like Elmer's white glue, thinned down with water, like 50-50. And I've used that before to slick the edges on chrome tan. I don't know, maybe someone's got some experience there that they can share if that was not a good idea and why. But I've done that before, and I think it works out pretty well. And I've used vegtan leather, and the nice thing about vegtan leather is you get a very uniform burnish on the edges with the vegtan. Okay, so that one there, it's not trimmed to size. I left it a little bit oversized here. So there's a few little marks down in here. That's not a problem. I'll just make sure that I arrange that in such a way that that's in the buried part of it. This is the center panel. And if I had something like that and it was perfectly clean, I wanted to cut it to the 3 1/4, I can cut that out of that pattern as well. So, and I really like this pattern. This is kind of cool looking here. The wallets I've done have just kind of been a little bit of I'll call them just a plain wallet. And yeah, so I'm anxious to see how these are received. I probably need to, rethink my pricing a little bit and, get a little bit more out of them. I talked to another artisan that was making minimalist wallets that were, a simple design as well. And that lady was charging 3 times what I charge, or almost 3 times my price. All right, let's work on shaping, the final cuts, and assembling of this wallet here. And you can mix these up. I've got a brown in the inner pocket and the outer pocket. You can run those together. I'll make some that'll be that way. But I'll also make them with the brown and the black together, like this. And you can do them in reverse of each other. I get a pretty strong mix of what people they want. And so I try to mix it up a little bit. And obviously you're doing most of that while you're doing the cutout. And I think that this black will look really nice with the blue here as well. I'm excited to see, there's some different patterns that I've created here. And these patterns, like I said earlier, but they're a pretty common embossing panel, and it's used more in the crafting and card making world. But I think that's going to make a cool looking design, and I'll probably run it with black. I think that will look really nice, I think. So once these are dry, then I'll seal those. On the blue, I've already sealed these front and back. I use Resin here. So we're going to take these to the next step now that we're ready here. So this will make 4 wallets. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, we're going to cut all of these outside pockets, and we're going to cut a radius on each one of those. And I'm just double checking myself here to make sure I got the right size and everything. Yep, these are all, yep. I had some I cut a little bit wider to trim later. I just want to make sure I didn't get them mixed up in here. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to work on this outer pocket first. And I will line up here. I'm looking to see if there's any corner that I need to cut off. It doesn't look like there's a top and a bottom to this. I make sure that I have the top lined up well. The bottom, I'm going to be doing some sanding and trimming. So if I'm off a little bit on my cut, that's where I want it to be. And I'll line up my top. I'll take my corner tool here. This is the 25 millimeter. And I'll just go ahead and cut that off there. So that's that corner. I'll do that to each one of these. Okay, so this is the inner pocket, and I've made this inner pocket a couple different ways, trying to find what works best for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, when this is assembled, it's going to be wrapped like this. The bottom will be finished, and then just this area here will be finished. I am actually going to burnish this after the next step. You may want to burnish it now and then, do it the other direction here, but I'm going to show you what I do. So what I'll do is I'll take my inner pocket and I'll fold it over, and I'll do the same with this as I did the other. I'm looking to see if there's any corners that I need to cut off or any scars that I need to bury. If there's a scar in here that you need to bury, then you need to keep in mind that you're going to have this bottom part covered. So that's where that would go. Then I'm going to line up this top corner here. If my bottom is off, and it looks like it's off by maybe a 32nd, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to line up this top corner, and then I'm going to come down here on this bottom edge here, or this side edge down towards the bottom corner, making sure I'm lined up on the top. And I'm going to use my 2-prong, you could do this on the sewing machine, pretty close to this edge, and I'm going to make holes just like that. And then I'm going to listen to some truck backing up out here, the beep, beep, beep. And then I'm just going to take some thread, and I'm just going to put a little bit of a stitch around here to hold things aligned. It makes it easier during the assembly process to do that. Probably didn't have to go around as many times, but all you're doing is you're trying to hold it there. I don't use any tape in here. All right. Just line up that top edge. That's the one that's going to be visible. This bottom edge will get trimmed or sanded as needed. Okay, now that I have it tacked down like that, I will go ahead and line up my corners here this way. Make sure it's not, twisted. And then I will use you could probably use that same size, but I always like to go to this bigger one here, this radius. And makes it a little easier to dig items out of that center pocket. So I'm going to cut each one of these like that. All right, we have our inner pockets created and our outer pockets created. We have our radiuses on them. Now's the time to do any sanding. I nicked that one there a little bit there. So I'll do my sanding on these. These two pieces here, these radiuses aren't going to be on the same side there. I mean, I want them to look good, but keep in mind, they're not on that same profile. So if you need to do some corrections there, I don't think anybody's going to notice if it's not, you know, large. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, when this is assembled, this is like this. So I need to radius, I just radius the front here up to this turn, and from there on I do both sides. I think it makes a cleaner look. So I'll go all the way around here with the number 1. And it's just trimming off fuzz there. And then I'll do the front now. It's really hard on some of this chrome tan. Sometimes on chrome tan, I'll just leave it alone. This might have been one I should have left alone. I'll work with it. I think I'm going to leave the rest of the black ones that way. Okay, so I'll do a little bit of finish sanding and burnishing on the edges of each of those. And then on the inner pocket, all I do is I do from here around to there. So this is where I go back and forth. Should I work on it when it's flat? It's easier to work on when it's flat. But then I don't have this rounded. I could do that later. It's probably thin enough leather. You could probably just leave it alone. But I like to clean up, especially this little bit of fuzz here. So I'll get that edge cleaned up here. Yeah, a little fuzzy on the back. I'll show you how to fix that. So I'll do that on each one of these, and then I'm going to burnish these edges. And I'll tell you what, there's lots of conversation about how to burnish chrome tan leather. I'll tell you what I use sometimes is I'll use white Elmer's glue reduced about 50% with water, put it on it and slick it down one direction, usually just with my finger, and that gives me a pretty nice edge on the chrome tan. This is a veg tan here, so that one I can burnish with water. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll get these edges burnished and edged, and then we'll come back here in just a minute. Here's one of the favorite patterns I've created. It has antique on it and TanKote front and back. I cut it to size. It's 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. And then I went ahead and installed double-sided tape around the edges here. You'll see here where I sewed that together to help me keep it aligned. It works pretty well that way. I've been working on these for a little while now. So I'll form my back crease here a little bit. I'll do the same with this piece here. Just make it a little bit easier here to deal with. And now we need to put these together. So I'll peel off the back side of my double-sided tape. I'm using Ted's tape. Not because it's my favorite, it's the only one I've got. I don't know if there's better out there. If someone's used something other than Ted's tape and has one they like, let me know what it is. I bought this a couple years ago, and I'm just about ready to reorder. And visually, I'm just lining up this with here, and it's got a little bit of a rounded surface here. So I get that outside line up pretty much even there. When I mash this down, you'll see it gets a nice reveal along the edge. Line it up here. Bring this other side over And now I'm going to visually line it up with this other side here. And I'll binder clip this together. And the same here. Like that. And I'll do half a dozen or a dozen of these. Here's another pattern that I created. And I'll get them clipped up. To me, it works easier if I kind of do them in stages and in groups. Once again, peel this out of here. If those bother you, can trim them a little shorter, but I didn't want them to have a chance of pulling apart there. Here's one that's two different color brown together, kind of a two-tone, tone-on-tone brown. And I've got black on the outside, so I've got quite a mix of them. And I've been working for a while. Here are some of those that I've completed. There's kind of a cool pattern there. All right, so let's take this to the next step. You can sew it on a sewing machine if you want. I like to show people how to do it by hand. I have two different wing dividers set here. And the reason why, I end up creating a little bit wider stitch line on the bottom because I will take this over and sand it, and that will end up with basically the same by the time I take a little bit off here on the bottom, sanding it. And I'm using my Weaver 4mm stitching chisels on this project, a little bit smaller pattern. And I do have it going right through where the tape's at. I like to keep the tape fairly close to this outer edge, and the main reason why is I don't want that to be in the pocket where you're going to potentially put cards or cash. Makes it a challenge to insert and remove those items from the wallet. And then you just figure out where you want to end the stitch line. That's about right there to me. And since I'm hand stitching it, I'll go ahead and stitch this part. And when I get that done, that'll hold this while I pull these off, and we'll do this next part here. I've done it both ways. And I've also completed this project using contact cement too, if you didn't want to use the double-edged tape. I go around this top twice, And that will give me the same look that I end up with on the other end when I do my back stitch on it. And by all means, if you want to do this in a stitching pony, you can. It's a small project, and I usually end up sitting here just kind of working along through these different ones. And I, right now, am finishing them all off, and then I'll go over to the sander and I'll sand them all at one time. Sometimes when it's been a while since I've completed these, I forget what's the easiest way. But I think the way I did it earlier here, I think is probably the best. I completed my top edge work from here all the way around. This is the inner pocket, so the rest of it's going to be buried there. The bottom will be done together. And then on the outer pocket, I did kind of the same thing. I did from here around to there, both sides here. And then when I get it sewn together on here, what I'll do is I will run the number 1 edge tool along this edge here up to there, and then I will burnish this together. And I think it, I mean, do your edge work how you feel most comfortable. You may want to do it beforehand, but to me, I end up doing a lot of denim work on them. That's what I typically use for my edge work, and I'll spend you know, some time on each one just burnishing those. And a lot of times I do that in front of the TV in the evening there while I'm watching something. So I'll come back here in just a moment. I'll be ready to go across this bottom here, and I'll show you how I do that. So I'm down here to this bottom corner. I'll remove these 2 binder clips here. I'll grab this one, which has got a little bit wider stitch line than the other side. It's not much, like a 1/16 of an inch. And I'll make my line across here. And I don't want to drive through where that thread's at there. Probably wouldn't damage it, but I just mark it, and then I come over here to that mark on here. And I'll go across here like I did on the other side. And just adjust on my last one so the last stitch comes out where I want it. Looks like I need just one more hole. There we go. So I'll just stitch this across here as well. If you were sewing on a sewing machine, what I would do is I'd leave those 2 binder clips, just like I did here, sew down to that corner, remove those binder clips, and turn and sew across the other way. I just like the neater finish of the hand stitching back stitch than the sewing machine. Sometimes I don't think that back stitch on the sewing machine looks as clean and neat as the hand stitch. And yeah, I could sew it quicker, obviously, but it's not a big project anyway, so the amount of time we save, I could probably find another place in the day to save that amount of time. So I'll go ahead and I'll just sew over to here, do my back stitch. I'll melt it off with my thread zapper, and I'll finish the rest of these. I've got about 10 more here to stitch, and when I get all of those done, then I will be over on the sander and we'll get the bottom edge finished, and I'll show you what I'm going to do there. I think that's really a cool looking wallet. So what you saw last, I used the Leather Machine Company sander burnisher, and I sanded all of the bottom edges to get those nice and flush, all 4 layers there. I used my rounding tool, just did a quick round over, just a gentle round over on the bottom here. Pretty small radius, like a 1/4 inch radius. Then I did just a simple burnish with water and denim to get the initial forming, just like a minute or 2 on each one. I went through and I dyed each one of them with dye. I used the black dye on the ones with black leather and, yep, brown dye on the ones with brown leather. And once I finished, I went ahead and I put a coat of Resin on here. And that tends to give a nice firm surface, and then I can do another level of sanding, which is like this one here. It's hard to see that, but level of sanding there. Once that's done, I went ahead and I put Resin on again. And the on these that have the pre-dyed veg tan, I put one last coat of Resin on the face of it. So that's kind of a cool design there. I think it is. One reason why I go through a lot of those steps, and I could probably uncomplicate things a little bit, but I'm using up leftover bits of thinner leather. And I know I said that early on, but I want to make sure it's clear. Like this black on the outside, that's a chrome tan leather. And when I go through these steps, I think I get a pretty nice burnish on the chrome tan leather, or I shouldn't even say a burnish, a sheen. Because I'm not so sure I would call it a burnish when the way I got there was really filling it with acrylics and then sanding it smooth. And I use the sandpaper around a stick because, in my opinion, it helps you control. If you use your hand, if there's a dip there, you'll create more dips. And by using a stick on there, it helps keep it from doing that. And I didn't spend a lot of time showing you how to do these edges. I think that's, maybe I shouldn't assume, but I think that's really kind of a learned skill that most people have at this point. Really the major point of this video was to try out those dyes and see how that worked. So once I get to this point, like I say, here it is here, and this is finished. And I may do one more pass at this. I don't know. It doesn't take very long to take some sandpaper and knock off. There's like a ridge right on this one along there. So I just go ahead and work on each one of them individually. If after, say, one pass of doing that, and that one looks good, then I'll just go ahead and throw it in there. And if it needs more work, then I put it off to the side here and I'll take it, one more pass. Maybe a little more sanding. This one here is maybe slightly rough. And when I mean one more sanding, that's about it there. And then one more coat of Resin on there. And I try not to build up those coats of Resin too quickly. I want them to dry between times. But I think it looks pretty good. Let me dab a little bit of Resin on there. Of course, it's wet, so it's going to be, somewhat shiny, but I don't have a very good angle for the sheen there. Here we go. So here it is. I just put one more coat of Resin on there. So I go ahead and I pitch them in there whenever I like how it looks, and then I'll work through them, and a couple of them may take a couple coats. Like this one here, this is all chrome tan leather here. And this is after one coat of Resin on there. And it's fuzzy still. So this one I'll work a little bit longer on, and it's chrome tan, so I really don't expect to get that same look as I would with veg tan. And I know there's probably somebody out there saying I can make it look the same as a veg tan. Probably can, but this is what I'm doing. And like I said, the major part of this video was really about showing how to create something a little bit different there. So I'll work here a little bit more, and I'll grab some here, and we'll do a little closing on here, and I'll let you see what we've got. Well, there you go. Another finished project here. Obviously, if you want to make the minimalist wallets, you don't have to include the embossing. But I think that the embossing is a really cool way to add some detail to leather. And I know that there's leather out there that you can purchase that comes embossed from different companies. But this is a way to have, I lost track. I think there's 6 different patterns here, and the embossing is on 2 different colors of leather. And by the time you have all the combinations, it seems like it just goes on forever and ever on the selection. And if I lay all these out, that might confuse people. So I'll put a couple of each color out there and let people, you know, dig through those. And as people buy them, then I'll just throw another one into the pile to keep it from being too complicated. And I'll put all of the information on the embossing plates and the machine. But as I said earlier, I think if you've got a clicker, especially if it's a manual clicker, where you can control, you know, how hard you're imprinting on that embossing plate, I think you could use that as well. And I know that on the clicker dies, you know, a lot of times you're putting, you know, a cutout die on the leather and pushing that through to the cutting plate. So, you know, you obviously wouldn't have that in there, and I'm not sure how you control the height of that for each of the dies. I'm sure there's a way to control how that works too. And instead of adjusting anything, you might shim it up with just an extra cutting board and maybe a piece of leather to back it up on there as well. Anyway, I've kicked that around enough, and I'm sure someone's going to say, well, that's, you know, that's kind of cheating. There's probably people that say that about a clicker die too, right? Instead of cutting it out by hand, now you're doing it automated with a clicker die. Anyway, I just think it's a fun way to emboss leather. I did some keychain cutouts as well. I haven't turned them into it yet, but that's another cool way. And you can use up some of your smaller scraps in different ways with this project as well. I've kicked it around the horn enough. Please like, share, and subscribe. But more importantly, I do hope you have a great day.